Today I'm attempting to beat Batman Arkham City without ever pressing the B button on my controller. Usually challenges like this include some kind of restriction on a certain move or attack, so I thought it'd be fun to change it up and remove an entire button instead and see how the game plays out. In case you're wondering, here's a list of everything that the B button actually does, which are also things that I can't use throughout this run. No cape stuns, which also excludes beatdowns, aerial attacks, and ultra stuns. No quickfire rec gun, no canceling, dropping, or anything like that. No special combo attacks that have B in it, and the final one is no upgrades. Wait, no upgrades? Yes, opening the back computer screen is a no-go because the only way to back out and close the screen is to use the B button. That means that I can't access the upgrade tab without instantly being completely stuck and not able to do anything. So essentially, I have to stop Protocol 10, cure Batman from dying, and defeat the Joker without ever upgrading, and while also having major restrictions on my moveset. And I guess I should mention now that I also decided to play on hard mode. Is it possible? I don't know, but let's find out. Instead of going through the story chronologically like usual, today we're bringing back an old method I used in my very first Arkham challenge. I'm going to talk about Predator and combat as a whole first, then move on to other specific areas that were challenging for me in order of difficulty. Predator was, for the most part, pretty easy because restrictions of B don't have that much of an impact on stealth to begin with. Sometimes it was a bit annoying when I couldn't just drop down from a gargoyle or ledge and instead had to glide to get into position, but aside from that, the restrictions weren't that big of an issue. As for the no upgrades aspect, that didn't affect Predator much either for the most part. Sure, not having ballistic armor was a nightmare if I ever got spotted, and my gadgets were somewhat limited without upgrades, but with all that said, I still had access to the majority of my stealth moveset, which meant all I had to do was avoid detection while using attacks like takedowns of the Batclaw to take out enemies. So surprisingly, Predator didn't provide much of a challenge throughout this run. Now let's take a look at combat, which proved to be much more difficult than Predator. Throughout the game, combat encounters took so long because I couldn't unlock critical strikes or use instant takedowns, which meant more time for me to make mistakes throughout these encounters. And of course, no armor upgrades and playing on hard mode meant every mistake was pretty crucial. I have to say though, the ground takedown cancel was a huge time saver and helped me take out enemies much faster than by pure punching. Now, at the beginning of the game, combat encounters were fairly easy because there were only basic enemies to deal with, which meant I could just rely on punches, counters, and of course the ground takedown cancel to take them all out. However, as we move forward in the story and tougher thugs like shield and armor enemies are introduced, things start getting much more complicated. Now, reminder that I don't have access to beatdowns, aerial attacks, special combo takedowns, or any special combo attack for that matter, and of course I can't even use the quickfire rec gun to immediately knock over armor thugs. That leaves us with really no conventional method to take these guys out. So how do we beat these tougher enemy types? Well, my strategy was to deal with all the basic enemies first, leaving just these stronger enemies to deal with on their own at the end of the fight. I would then use either explosive gel or the Batclaw to knock them over, and then use the ground takedown to finish them off. Sure, it was annoying to have to deal with the harder enemies throughout the entirety of a fight instead of just being able to take them out first and not have to worry about them, but considering I didn't have access to a quick way to deal with them while everyone else was attacking me too, meant I didn't have much of an option. Again, this didn't give me that much of an issue throughout the challenge, just more of an annoyance than anything, and that was pretty much it for combat. Alright, we've covered the two main aspects of gameplay, which means it's time to talk about some other challenging areas throughout this run, because there are a lot of them. Of course, these will be in order of difficulty, starting off with number 5.
Only one of us can leave this chamber alive.
The Ghul boss fight has 4 different stages, 2 with Giant Raish and 2 combat encounters with ninjas. Now, the combat was still fairly easy despite all the restrictions. It certainly took me longer to beat these guys than usual because, again, no combo takedowns or critical strikes, but it was simply a matter of time before I took them all out. However, Giant Raish is where the boss fight picks up and the real challenge begins. Now, remember how I don't have access to the quickfire rec gun? Well, without it, I have to use the rec gun normally, which turned out to be an absolute nightmare. The rec gun fires quickly, sure, but immediately after using it, there's about a 1-second delay while Batman puts the gadget away where you can't input anything. 1 second doesn't sound like much, but in this boss fight, that's the difference between getting hit or not. And with no armor upgrades, getting hit is something I need to avoid. Like here, I'm literally mashing dodge, but I'm just stuck in the animation for so long that I end up getting hit regardless. However, I eventually got the timing down and realized that hitting Raish right before he attacked would cancel whatever move he was currently doing, so as long as I had good timing and my electricity wasn't blocked, then the gadget animation wouldn't end up affecting me. So, although somewhat annoying and challenging, I was able to get through Raish without too much trouble.
You cannot win. I, Hugo Strange, am your successor. I have saved Gotham.
Wonder Tower is the absolute peak of combat and predator difficulty in Arkham City, and having major restrictions on my arsenal did not make this section easy. Combat definitely gave me some trouble, but I tried to just stick to my strategy of taking out all the basic enemies first by punching, then turn my attention to harder thugs, which still worked pretty well regardless of the difficulty increase. Now, Predator provided a much more interesting challenge here. At this stage of the game, guns do max damage, and since I didn't have armor, I was practically a one-shot. That means if I ever got spotted, I was instantly dead. So to avoid detection, I tried to just camp the gargoyles and farm inverted takedowns, which was not only fairly safe, but also extremely effective. I know, it's cheap, but it got the job done and I really don't care. So I was able to pass the combat and predator in Wonder Tower, but there's still one more challenge to talk about. When climbing the tower, this section seemingly requires you to use B in order to drop off the ledge onto the lower platform. At first I was a little worried, but after some experimenting, I quickly found out that all you have to do is keep shuffling along the ledge until you get to this Riddler trophy, and from here you can just glide all the way to the platform. Challenge avoided, which means we officially get through Wonder Tower without ever pressing B.
As luck would have it, here you are, standing just where I want you.
Next up, we've got Penguin's Museum, which has multiple roadblocks we need to get through. The first one is this Titan Thug, where you're normally supposed to use Ultra Keep Stuns on him. Without that attack in my arsenal, how am I supposed to stun the Titan and take him out? Well, turns out Explosive Gel has the exact same effect on Titan enemies, so all I had to do was use the Quickfire Explosive Gel to stun him instead of an Ultra Cape Stun. Easy enough. Roadblock number 2 was immediately after the Titan, where I ran into some trouble inside this water room. You see, in this room you have to use the Bat Claw to pull yourself across the water, right? Well, this animation is unfortunately infinite, meaning until you cancel out of it, you can't do anything. And since you're normally supposed to use B to cancel, it seems like I'm just stuck in this endless tugging motion unless I hit the B button. So I got to experimenting, trying to find some other way to cancel out of this animation. And what I found is that you can actually cancel the motion by grappling instead of pressing B. It seemed to work okay at first, but the only problem is that once I was too far away from this tall platform, there wasn't anywhere else I could grapple to. This would again leave me stuck in the animation, which means we need a different fix. So I got to work by testing every button on my controller to see if something happened, and I discovered that for some reason, hitting any button on the D-pad does the exact same thing as B and cancels out of the animation. So all I had to do was use a button on the D-pad instead of using B. It's not the solution I was expecting, but I'm definitely not complaining.
I mean, if you wanted to be cured so badly, you only had to ask.
Breaking into Joker's steel mill for the second time was definitely the hardest challenge I faced so far in this run. The trouble begins instantly as soon as you walk in the door, where the game kind of forces you to use B to drop off this small ledge. However, I found a fix for this pretty quick. All you have to do is sort of wiggle Batman against the side of the wall, and he'll kind of just glitch off the ledge for whatever reason. And on top of that, a well-placed dive will put you right on the edge of the platform too, so problem solved. Next up, we have more Bat Claw tugging, which again, all I had to do was use the D-pad instead of B to cancel out of the animation and continue on without issue. As we move forward, nothing gave me too many problems, at least until I reached the final boss room. This fight consists of 2 mini-bosses, Mr. Hammer and a Titan, along with a ton of regular enemies. Now, I actually ran into a mine by accident way back in this Predator room, and to my surprise, I still hadn't healed completely. That meant I was actually going into this fight with only about half health, and of course, do I have to say it again, no armor. To start off the boss fight, I immediately targeted Mr. Hammer in hopes of taking him down before the Titan joined in, which was easier said than done because remember, I don't have access to the Bat Swarm ability. This meant I pretty much had to fight off multiple enemies at once while also attacking Mr. Hammer instead of just being able to stun them all and keep punching. On top of that, Mr. Hammer is also one of the few enemies that can attack you while you're in the middle of a counter, which makes fighting off all these thugs at once a pretty big handful. However, I was still able to get in enough hits that take Mr. Hammer down, as well as knock out a couple other thugs before the Titan dropped in, but not before taking a few hits myself, leaving me with a whopping 1 HP. I just want to say that some of these hits weren't even my fault, like here where the stupid level up text literally blocked my view of the counter icon. Anyways, now we've got a Titan to take care of, where I had to be flawless for the rest of the fight or insta-death. Great, I found that the best time to stun him was actually, believe it or not, mid-charge, because I could keep my distance while leading him over the explosive gel. So my strategy consisted of prepping some explosive gel, then then beating up the regular enemies at a distance, and once the Titan charged, I would explode the gel and beat him up from there. Also, sometimes it was safer for me to just deal with the basic enemies who were constantly attacking me, rather than try to get in a quick beatdown on the Titan. I could do this by using my explosive gel over and over again in between punches, stun locking him to the point where he wasn't even a threat anymore. And to my surprise, I clutched up with 1 HP while my strategy worked like a charm, and the Titan was defeated. So that marks the end of Joker's Steel Mill, and with challenge number 2 successfully beaten, that leaves us with just one more challenge to go. 3 times throughout the story, Batman's map will automatically pop up to show the player where to go. Once for the Doctor, another for the GCPD hostages, and one final time during Protocol 10. As you know, the Batcomputer screen is this run's worst nightmare because I can't back out of it without pressing B. I tried so much to get around this, but the screen just opens no matter what, and once it comes up, you literally cannot get back out. A really disappointing end to a challenge that was so close to being a successful run, but has to be a fail out of sheer technicality. So no, you can't beat Arkham City without pressing B, but the fact that you can use one of the core buttons only 3 times and still beat the entire game is pretty impressive to me. Real quick, before you go, I just want to say that I'm working on my biggest project ever, or what I like to call the world's hardest Arkham challenge, so stay tuned for that. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more Arkham content, and I'll see you next time.